Welcome to the People Powered Community Podcast, where we dive into the inspiring stories of go-to-market professionals who have leveraged their skills to create strong and lasting connections within their community. Get ready to be inspired and learn how you too can harness your business superpower for good.
Hello, and welcome to the People Powered Community Podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Greenwood, founder and CEO of Chief Evangelist Consulting. Today, I am here with Stephanie Valenti, the CRO of SmartBug Media. So welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you, Leslie. So excited to be here.
I know. I'm so glad we had a chance to catch up before this. Stephanie and I know each other from, now almost 3 years of Pavilion. I actually interviewed her, and then we became fast friends, and really appreciating that friendship.
Yes, me too. Very excited to do this with you and support you in this podcast. It's going to be a good time. I just know it.
It is for sure.
Yeah.
So what we're going to talk today is about your superpower and how that relates to community. But first, let's get to know you. Tell us who you are, what you're doing now, and a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah. So I am currently a chief revenue officer at SmartBug Media. And what that means at SmartBug Media is running the total go-to-market. So being responsible for marketing, sales, all of our client delivery teams, recently product, and revenue operations. So everything that works together to make revenue happen, I have been leading. And so lots of fun, learning a lot. And but before this, I was a COO. So I took my revenue hat off for the first time and was in all operational departments. So finance, HR, manufacturing floor with labor. So that was crazy. That could be a whole podcast on its own. And then before that, I was leading sales, right? Sales and operations is my entire background, passion, just absolutely love the connection with people in sales leadership. And so that's my career background. Personally, I live in Dallas, Fort Worth. I've moved a ton for my career. So lived in, I guess it's 5 states. I've got 3 kids, 2 dogs, a husband, and with Dallas based Leslie, get to hang out with her in person all the time in real life.
Yay. What was your first sales job? I don't even think I remember that. Where was your first step into sales?
Yeah. So before I made it to like what we would call real sales today, like actual B2B sales, I actually dipped my toe in with car sales. I only lasted 3 months. I don't know. I lasted 3 months, and it was like I was doing restaurant and restaurant operations. And I, like at 25, I was assistant general manager of like a huge 10,000 square feet, like boutique restaurant. And it was like, okay, do I really want to do this forever? Like there were aspects I enjoyed, but people were telling me like, you're way too hungry. Like you've got to go try sales. And I didn't have any background in it. And I didn't think anyone would give me a shot, but car sales sure would. So I tried that. I realized I was actually pretty good at it. And then had the opportunity to get into my real first B2B sales role. And that was with Staples Business Advantage. And I was with them for 7 years throughout my career. So really grew up throughout leadership in that role.
I bet if you'd stayed in car sales, you'd now own like a whole fleet of like car dealerships. Because like one thing you all probably know about Stephanie is like, it's like 0 or 150%. Like I say I'm 120, you're 150. So you would have owned like every car dealership in Dallas at this point if you'd have stayed in car sales.
I should have stayed in car sales.
Can't even imagine. Plus that we're talking car sales, 10 plus years ago. Like, ooh.
Oh gosh. Again, we could have a whole podcast about my experience in those 3 months as well.
Oh my goodness. That is crazy. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your superpower.
Now I have my take on what I think your superpower is, but tell us what your superpower is.
Yeah. I knew that you were going to ask this, right? For the audience, I knew this was coming, and so I really had to think about it. We don't often think about our own superpower in a sense of we're going to display it out to the world, and so
Hence why we're having this podcast.
yeah. So look, I think that my superpower, and the reason I chose this one is it was earned. It was not something I was born with, and so I'm going to say that my superpower is grit.
Okay. Tell me more. How'd that come to be?
Yeah. So when I say I wasn't born with it, I really wasn't, right? I didn't grow up in awful circumstances, right? Like very, I'd say middle lower class, like blue collar family, right? But I had a great life. Great moms in cheerleading, in sports, like all the things. Everything was good. But I thought it was a really good idea to get pregnant at 19. Actually, I was pregnant at 18, baby at 19. And for me, like I didn't have that type of like upbringing, right? Like I was going off to college. I had my life planned. It wasn't gritty. Like I didn't study a bunch in school or make sure that I had all straight A's. I was way more on the social side. But I definitely wasn't somebody that was planning to have a child anytime soon. I was even going to go do cheerleading in college. Like I had a plan, right? And that put a little bit of a caveat in my plan. And so but I wasn't going to be a stereotype. I think that's what hit me while I was pregnant. I told myself, like, I'm not going to end up working in like a restaurant or an office job, like an entry level. I'm not going to let that happen to me. Like I had goals, I had things I wanted to do. I always had expensive taste that I couldn't afford growing up, and I wanted more. And so, as I was a very young mom, I was working 3 jobs, going to school. I don't know what sleep was during that time, right? I was not sleeping, but I had a mission. I was going to make sure that my kid had a great life. I was going to make sure that I made something of myself and that my child went off to university and had some of the things that maybe I didn't have growing up, right? But I was going to make sure I did that. So I worked at a doctor's office. I waitressed at night, and I was a karaoke DJ. Yeah, all 3.
Are there clips?
Huh?
Are there clips? Are there videos of that?
Thank goodness that there were not like video cell phones then, because I'm sure that there would have been a whole bunch, but there were not that. So, but yeah, like I think that going through that experience so young and not having a lot of challenges before that, and then going through the experience of being a mom, having 3 jobs, going from like child life to adult life that fast, and at that intensity, made me realize then that I can truly do anything. Like I can do anything I put my mind to. And so that changed me forever. Now, that was my first trial and tribulation, right? Because I've had a whole lot more of those. Because what I've also found is that with all of that grit, generally pushes me to also be comfortable taking a lot of risk. I think they go together. If you're super gritty, you're willing to jump in and just do things without truly thinking about it first.
Because you can pick yourself back up. You've proven it, and you're ready to, despite what other hurdles or challenges will come your way.
That's right. And so from that, I've jumped into roles that I didn't know I could do or not do and figured it out and had success. But there was that risk in the beginning. I've gone through a lot of, just like everybody has, we've all had our stuff. But I'd say that event specifically is what earned me the badge of gritty, in which I didn't have while growing up before.
I'm going to make you an actual badge. Call it gritty. And then there you go.
And then we can do like a song to it.
Say that again.
Gritty. We're going to make a song up about.
I think there is a song. At least there's a dance that's called gritty. So what do you do? Obviously you're a CRO at a big company. You have, professional success. So what do you do now to continue to nurture that superpower and still drive yourself to take those risks,
Mhm.
et cetera?
Yeah, yeah. So for a little while, I want to go back to when I first was interviewing with you for Pavilion, and I was at Very and just left the organization. And during my time at Very, I had internal grit for the company, right? I put everything into that organization, everything, but I had no external grit. None.
Mm,
So there was nothing else I was doing. And I lost a little bit of my self confidence in myself during that time. And
mhm.
Leslie, you actually opened me up to learning what gritty truly can be for your own self on outside of your organization. And so if I look at what does gritty mean today, it's jumping in and saying, I'm going to go teach this course because I need to learn about something. And I know that other people are interested in my experiences. And so it doesn't matter that I'm already working 50 hours in my normal job. I'm going to go create content for Pavilion and I'm going to go teach a course because I'm going to learn something from it and I'm going to give to others during that time. And so to now fast forward to today, I'm still doing that. Right. And because
Mhm.
you pushed me, so for the record, everyone listening, Leslie made me teach that course. So it is both her fault and her honor because I was not game. Like I was not game to teach. So I teach a revenue forecasting course and it was SaaS methodology. I'd never been in SaaS. And Leslie's like, you're doing it. And I'm like, oh man, like I don't want to do it.
I
But she made
remember
me.
you I remember you telling me how many hours you practice in front of the mirror. I'm like, dude, you got this. Let's just do it.
I did like 5 run throughs and it's 90 minutes of content. So if you can think about how many hours that is. But like that's where it comes from now today, right? I am constantly raising my hands within the Pavilion community. Locally, I'm getting involved. I'm serving on a judges panel for University of Texas for like an entrepreneurial program.
Oh,
Like I'm
yay.
constantly raising my hand to do stuff. And that keeps me gritty because I got
Mhm.
to figure out time management for that. I have to figure out how I make sure I keep doing my job that like pays my bills every day well. But I feel like it allows me to teach others how to do that too. So
Mhm. Yeah, and those are all risks which help you grow. And
totally.
think about the growth, like I'm sure you would have had anyway, but like throwing you a little bit off the cliff. And I think some people do need to throw off the cliff. And you've also been a very good help to me, kind of throwing me off the cliff in return. So in all
Yeah.
fairness, folks, it's not just me throwing Stephanie off the cliff. There's been some reciprocal cliff throwing.
For sure.
Um, but I think that is how you're nurturing it and growing it. And I think it's expanding. It's not at the same level it was before, like it's going up, and I think those things will benefit you in the long run. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I think your one of your superpowers is,
Okay.
which is um, creating order out of mess.
Mm.
So that's like your operations background. I mean, we work together as chapter heads. You're like, okay, we're going to do X, Y, Z, da, da, and we're like, great, let's execute because Stephanie's already organized all of that. And I think that's the way that your mind works, is what's like a super asset to, it's asset to your friends. It's an asset to your companies you work for because you're able to see that kind of whole picture. And then just like the dots just all connect for you where it might take others of us some roundabout stuff before we get to that answer, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think at work, you're totally right. It is something that I have always been great at. And I'll even go back to my time during restaurant. I mean, youngest by far manager in this large organization. And I would run expo, right? So I was great with customers, great with the team, but they would put me on the expo line. And for those that aren't in restaurant or don't know what that is, it's dealing with the chef and laying out all the tickets and knowing when to fire what to consolidate the plates so that you get all of the plates at the table at one time. And that's when I was like 24, 25. So I was running the expo line, not the general manager, not the executive chef. They asked me to do it because it's almost like playing Tetris, right? And I was really good at organizing that. And that carried on into sales. So, my first sales role, we had like 800 salespeople at Staples Business Advantage. Like, it was a huge sales organization. I made President's Club my first year. You had to be the top 19.
Oh,
It
wow.
wasn't because I was a better seller, right? It's because I could operationalize my engagement and my reach out, and I'll layer on some grit, right?
Sure, of
But
course.
that's what it was. There was, I had 600 leads, and this was way before auto dialers and cadences and AI, right? This was like old school. But I knew that I was going to call these, 50 people, and I was going to power through them. And I had all of my tabs open, and everything was just very operationalized. And so I even look at when I come into new organizations. So the past 3 organizations, I've been brought in to help them scale into something they hadn't done in the past. Like, that's why people bring me in, whether it's more revenue, new product, new channel. They have me come in and they're like, we want you to help. And the first thing that I do is I look at structure. Because if the structure doesn't promote the process, then we're not going to be able to be successful. And so all 3, including the role I'm in today, I've had to do reorgs, right? Because the org that comes naturally when you're a small organization like a startup isn't necessarily the right structure or org to be able to propel your growth into the next phase. And the reason this happens, Leslie, is usually they let the people drive. So they do people, then process, then structure. It needs to flip over. So it's structure, then process, then people. And it sounds insensitive, right? But your structure needs to be built for what your business needs. And then you put people in boxes. You don't have people with all these talents and then you just bolt them on to where they could go, because it breaks your process.
Mm-hmm.
So that's generally my head, whether I knew I was ever doing it or not. I don't think I thought of myself as like, oh, I'm a big like change management structure person, but it always happens every time I go in. So I would agree. You are probably right. That is a superpower.
Thank you for telling me I'm right. We can do this all day.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so 2 things on that is one, so many great sellers come from restaurants. Customer success people come from restaurants. So for those of you that are out there, might be expoing, you could be the next operations leader. Yeah, because I can see that. It's just this visual mind map that you're making. That is so amazing. There was something else I was going to say, but I now no longer remember what it is. So we're just going to, keep moving on. So and I think you've touched on this already, but as you think about your superpower, grit, etc., how do you use that in community? I know you're big into community. You participate a lot in community. I have so appreciated you over the years in your participation in community. So tell me how that kind of interweaves today, and how does that affect how you go about in the world?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in community. You're right. I will say that community and the people that I've met throughout community has gotten me where I am today. Period. I'd put almost all of the credit back to community and the exposure that it gave me, but also what I've learned from what I've given it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so yes, there's Pavilion, but I'm now involved in 4 different communities, but definitely most active in Pavilion. And I've had the opportunity to, from a grit perspective, learn and force myself to be uncomfortable in things that I didn't know. Right now, I've always been okay with that, but even more so, back to what I was talking about, Leslie making me teach that class. It's now like someone will ask, hey, can you fill in for this course? They'll hand me a deck. I don't know what the deck is. Like, I've never taught this before, but I always say yes. And it's not because people are like, learn to say no. Yeah, I get it. I'm working on it. But I did it the other day. I filled in for GTM Enterprise School. It was a RevOps deck. It was not my deck. And I started going through it and I taught it. And I met this unbelievable person in that course that was being very active. And they messaged me after. I've had coffee with them, virtual coffee, twice. And I built that relationship. So, yes, it was a little bit stressful at the moment. I'm like, why did I say yes to this? I get in, and then I get to end up like meeting somebody and having a relationship. And so that grit of saying yes ultimately led to a relationship. And that relationship, my guess, will serve that person and myself way beyond the existence of one class. And
Yeah.
so that's what I look at. Like when it comes to community, that long tail of reward for both ways.
Yeah.
Someone I got in a little bit of a back and forth with somebody on LinkedIn yesterday where
And
they
by
were
back and
saying
forth, you mean
it was fine. And
okay.
she was right. So I owned my, thing, but it was like I left Pavilion because I feel like I give, and I don't get anything in return.
Mm,
And I like wholeheartedly disagree, right? Like the point of community is give. The tail of return is in the future.
mhm.
And so I disagreed, but I didn't use the appropriate words. I just said I disagree and with your opinion on Pavilion, and I can't disagree with her experience. Like that's not
Sure.
appropriate, right?
Yeah.
So I modified, and it was fine. I owned my mistake, but that's what it is, right? It's giving and giving, and I would say I've gotten more than my fair share of
Mhm.
return, right? I'm in the role that I'm in right now because Leslie had a relationship with you. You had a relationship with someone within the Pavilion community and saw a post. We did an intro and I interviewed. Sure, I earned the job, but I wouldn't have even
Absolutely.
had the intro if it wasn't for community. I'm a dean of a school. That does pay money, right? I run the CRO channel within a community of 1,900 members. That does pay a little, right? But it's more about like just the sheer volume that I'm constantly having the opportunity to be a part of on a daily basis.
Mhm. I think I wish more people either had the opportunity to participate in community or thought about the community in the way that I know you and I think about it, because I would say the same thing. Without community, like one, I wouldn't have this podcast. I wouldn't have my current job. I wouldn't have the friends that I have. I mean, I can go anywhere in the world now and have coffee with someone. And you know me, I love to have my coffee dates. Like I've got them lined up, across the world. I just had a DM last night from someone who I've never met from Toronto, and he's coming in for a volleyball tournament. He's like, "Hey, can we finally meet in person?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll mark my calendar. When do you want to meet?" So like those types of things are also the payments that you
Yeah.
make that you get besides the money. And that's the way I also look at it as I'm building community now for companies, is that, if they create these relationships, the money will come. It's the sticky glue. Their company will be the sticky glue that holds it all together. So I think that yeah, I would love to see more and more of these types of things going out in the
Yeah,
world.
you're totally right. And like there's also right in community, there's these no selling policies, which I 100% believe in.
Mhm.
But do know like people that are thinking about maybe going into community as a revenue stream or a just even building like unity and brand. I've gotten my fair share of business from the Pavilion community. I have so many people that reach out. They know what I do, and they come to me because they trust me because they saw me teach a class,
Yeah.
right? Or I had a mentorship session with them once, or I answered a question in a thread, right? So it absolutely does come back in revenue for an organization,
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah. If you do it right, and
Yeah,
if you give value without expectation,
totally.
and then you've earned the trust. And I mean, because think about those sales that you get to, they're not your normal sales cycle. You don't have to go through
No,
85 weeks of discovery and trying to make rapport and all of that,
no,
because you've already done it.
you've already
So
done it. Yep.
I think that's go community, folks. All right. Well, let's. I got one more question for you before we wrap up. So, if I were to take away one aspect of your superpower, and there's someone coming up behind you, or there's other leaders out there, what advice would you give someone listening today who might feel that, grit or making, sense of chaos, and wanted to build on it? What would you tell them? What's their takeaway today?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna give one nugget for both. All
Okay.
right. So we'll start with grit. Um, Grit isn't just hard work, right? That's not grit. Otherwise, my superpower would be work ethic, right?
True. Okay. Good
So
point.
so so if you are gritty, you've been through something, you've then like you think you are gritty, right? You've got that gritty thing. Gritty means that you have hard work ethic, you have good work ethic, you are willing to take risk, and you are willing to do more than the person beside you, whatever that could be. Sometimes it's even some ideation, right? So if you were sitting in your chair right now, let's say you're in sales, you're 125% to quota, you're not really learning and growing anymore, go join a community that's going to challenge you, or go sign up for a course that is something that is totally outside of your comfort zone. Me, I was awful at math. Like I am legit awful at numbers. Like I even have to count on my fingers. Like it is awful. I am
How do
so
you
bad.
teach forecasting?
I teach forecasting. That's right. So people are like, what the heck, right? But it's because I went and I said, nuh-uh, I am never going to let a CFO tell me that I don't understand financial numbers ever again. So I'm going to go do something about it. So I'm telling you, if you have a weakness and you are gritty, go do something about it.
Awesome. Awesome.
Chaos. So people that have operational minds, right? They often sometimes will do it in their head and then don't feel like they can get it out in words and verbalize their vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so do yourself a favor and buy yourself a whiteboard or even just
Okay.
a big piece of paper. Because I found that for a while I had all these ideas, but they never would come out in the right way. And the minute I have an idea now, I clear my whiteboard, I put on some music, and I just start writing. Right? I draw pictures, I put thoughts down, but you need to get it out first before you can verbalize it somewhere else. So that would be my tip for you.
That's a great tip. I mean, I have my Remarkable, which I take with me everywhere. Um, I guess you take pictures. Do you take pictures of your whiteboard before you erase? Like, how do you keep capture? You've already taken that and put it into some type of actual documentation,
Yeah, that,
usually.
or sometimes it's about just getting it out. Like, I think oftentimes for me, like it's in my head. I'm not verbalizing it because I'm talking in pictures because that's how I'm seeing it. And
Yeah.
so if I can just get it out of my body, just get it out of my mind and then get it onto paper, then I can then walk through it in a good, like structured cadence to somebody else. So then we can build together. So I don't normally, like even notebooks, I'll write down, like I'll write things down. I never look back at my notes because
Okay.
once it's out, I remember it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that in itself is organizing out of chaos, because in your
It is.
brain all this is happening and you've organized it and gotten it out on paper. Ooh, what a
Yeah.
great full circle we had right there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, okay, so to recap for the listeners, one, if you have grit, take a risk, step outside your comfort zone, continue to learn and do that little extra. And again, having grit does not mean just working harder. And then if you are good at creating things out of chaos, try a whiteboard and get it out of your mind and onto something. And that way it'll be easier for you to speak it out. I think I'm going to take that tip away for me
Awesome.
as well. So
Great.
awesome. Well, Stephanie, this has been such a terrific episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story and superpower with our listeners. Tell us, where can we connect with you? I mean, I know where to find you, but tell me where we can find you.
Yeah. So very active on LinkedIn. Spend a lot of time there, both writing content and connecting with others. And I'd love to connect with all of you. So feel free to connect with me there. I think my / is Valenti S. So
Yes.
easy to find. But outside of that, I'm not super active on any other social. And then through the Pavilion community, of course, if you're in there, or the demand-based community, I am involved in both of those, and you can reach me in those Slack threads as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
See you on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.
Bye.